everybody. What a great crowd. This is terrific. Everybody showing their concern for the environment. Thank you. My name is Kurt Hull. I'm Project Director at Climate Change Connection. And on behalf of the 26 different environmental organizations that have come together to organize this event, I welcome you on their behalf as well as on behalf of UMSU, our host here at the University of Manitoba. And I also welcome those people who are tuning in on UMSU, or UMFM, the university radio station, for an audio stream. And there is also a Facebook live stream that is being put on courtesy of Africans in Winnipeg South. So there's a Facebook feed for that. So welcome. I will start with the land acknowledgement. Since we are on the lands of the University of Manitoba, which is treaty territory, and we will start respectfully by recognizing the fact that we are all treaty people. And this is the university's land acknowledgement. The University of Manitoba campuses are located on original lands of Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and on the homeland of the Métis Nation. We respect the treaties that were made on these territories. We acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past, and we dedicate ourselves to move forward in partnership with Indigenous communities in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. Then hopefully we'll be on a moral footing to get started. Terrific. The housekeeping items that we need to address related to masking. I noticed that everyone is masked. Thank you very much. It is the policy of the University of Manitoba, their health and safety protocol, that masks are mandatory in all indoor spaces. And as you leave, if you have a disposable mask, there are recycling bins or disposal bins outside in the lobby. We're asking that all candidates, as they're seated, maintain their masks, but unless you're speaking. And when you speak, remove your mask, speak into the microphone, and everybody's sharing the microphone here to make your comments. The washrooms, there are washrooms out the door and to the left, and there's also a water fountain down the hallway to the left as well. Now, a bit about the process. And the process was remarkable. As I said, 26 different organizations coming together to come up with what ultimately was 5 questions related to the environment, their key concerns. We had to be very succinct because there's quite a number of voices to be heard here, and we want to make sure that we have an opportunity for everyone to have some opportunity to share their thoughts with us. So all of the candidates received a questionnaire a number of weeks ago, and were therefore able to consider the questions and answer them back online. But now we're going to have an opportunity during this evening to hear them live, giving us their thoughts on some of the aspects of those questions that were shared. And so in the process of this evening, this is the agenda that we're going to do. So we're going to start with, once I introduce our wonderful moderator, we're going to start with opening statements from each of the candidates, going from one end of the table to the other. Everyone gets 2 minutes, which is going to be timed. And then after that, they do their opening remarks. Then they are going to have an opportunity to answer one of the 5 questions of their choosing. And again, they're going to have 2 minutes to do that. And then after that is over, we will take questions from the audience. And I think it's on the next slide there. Yeah. So if you have a phone with a camera, and you know the QR code, or you can type in menti.com and that code 4501213, you can ask your questions on your phone. The questions will be monitored, and if it's accepted as being a reasonable question, and not a repeat or something, then our moderator will pass it through, and you can vote on the questions that have been accepted. And so the questions that will be asked will be drawn from those questions that have been submitted through Menti and have received some number of votes. So it's going to be an interesting evening with lots of dynamics to it. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our Master of Ceremonies. We're going to leave that, and the Master of Ceremonies here is the lovely and delightful Richard Kluche. Let's have a hand for Richard Kluche. As you probably know, Richard is the co-host of the news on 680 CGOB, and he's also a reporter for Global News. So I will turn it over to you, Richard.
Thank you. This is on. You can hear me just fine? No. I have to move this way, perhaps? A little bit better like this? Yeah, I'm wary of that speaker, so if I have to go behind it, even more I will. Can everybody hear me at the back? Candidates, good evening. We have initial opening remarks, and you'll see the timer right over here. And I'm not going to name you individually. I'm going to let you introduce yourselves that way. We're going to start on this side of the room. Make sure you're nice and tight and right to the microphone. We really appreciate that. And then your 2 minutes will start that way. Again, good evening. Thank you so very much, Kurt. Your 3-minute opening remarks were more like 8 minutes. So we're a little bit behind. So let's begin now with our very first speaker. Thank you and good evening.
Good evening, everyone. I'm so excited to be here tonight. I graduated from the University of Manitoba, so I'm just excited to be back home. My name is Idris Adelakun. I'm a professional engineer in the province of Manitoba. I'm a certified project manager. I'm also a certified professional in engineering management. I'm a Scrum Fundamental certified. I've been working in a Canadian business organization for over 9 years. I manage teams, I manage projects, I manage resources. I completed my master's degree program at the University of Manitoba in biosystems engineering. During that period, I represented the University of Manitoba at an international conference in Ontario, which was organized by Northeast Agricultural and Biological Engineering Conference in collaboration with Canadian Society for Bioengineering, and I won in first place. I also completed a PhD in leadership. I believe that with my skills, I should be able to move our city to an enviable height. One thing I want you to remember for today is to know that I'm running for mayor of Winnipeg because I want a city that can stand for everyone, whereby you have a person that can stand for everyone. Our great city, Winnipeg, needs a voice that can speak for all and sundry. And this is one of the reasons why I'm running for mayor of Winnipeg. I can't do it on my own, but I believe we can do it together. One of the things I'm trying to look at, I have 4 key areas, but environment is part of that. And I know very soon you are going to hear from me. Thank you.
Thank you so very much.
I'm clearly not the engineer. Thank you all for coming out, and I just want to start by telling you, someone in government, the not-for-profit NGO community is the foundation of hope and our strongest partner in essential, life-saving change. So thank you, and give yourselves a round of applause, please. So I just want to say a few things. One is, for me, this is not just the most important issue. It is the foundation on which all other issues stand and are connected. The failure of the environment is the failure of the very foundation and core of the life of a city. There is no way to have a city without it. I have done a lot of work internationally with the not-for-profit, private, and in all orders of government in Canada, and I've learned one thing. There is no job in politics where you can get action on climate change faster or get us to a fully regenerative economy than being a mayor. There is simply no other role because everything is local and everything is global. And when you're looking at the foundations of energy, transportation, and buildings, and the ability to move systems, mobilize people, work at the most important level of organization, which is the neighborhood level, and creating change and getting through barriers of poverty and some of the barriers to that, and that you can flip systems. Energy, transportation, housing, neighborhood planning will all be less expensive in a carbon neutral regenerative city. You're switching from materials, but you have to flip the whole thing. So we need an ecosystem, citywide, comprehensive plan. If I could sort of call it a local drawdown, to use an expression. Because if we go to all electric motors, all electrical system, our whole transportation system becomes less expensive. If we go to comprehensive redistributive systems and housing, like they did in Greenwich Village, it all becomes less expensive. So I'll just leave it at that. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you so very much. If you are just joining us on Facebook Live or on radio, I'm 680 CJOB's Richard Kluche. I'm purposely not announcing in this initial round who everybody is because I want to give you the opportunity to introduce yourself to the audience. Thank you, and go ahead.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Good. My name is Jenny Montfleck, and I am a candidate for Mayor of Winnipeg. I'm pleased to be here tonight. And I noticed, looking around the room, that everyone's being very respectful of the University of Manitoba's mask mandate. And I know that Winnipeggers are very respectful people, so I can see why you're doing that. The last 2 years have been really, really difficult for all of us. And certainly in March of 2020, most of us got really scared. I know I did. And we followed the rules, and we wore the masks, and we got the vaccines, and we did the social distancing, and we stayed home, and our kids stayed home. And it caused a lot of damage, economic and personal, to many, many, many of us. And at some point, this thing's got to be over. And in fact, today, the federal government announced the end of all of their cross-border COVID restrictions. So there's not going to be any masks, there's not going to be any vaccine requirements or ArriveCAN apps. And I think that that's about time. And quite frankly, I'm done wearing masks. I'm done social distancing. It's time for us to recover, and I'm really looking forward to doing that. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the disability community. I love it. Biology will tell us.
So ladies and gentlemen,
There's the door.
ladies and gentlemen, we're all about democracy here, I get that, but we also realize that we are at the University of Manitoba and their policy is a mask mandate, like my employer as well. But I'm sincerely hoping that whatever happens this evening, we don't get too wrapped up in emotion where we're catcalling people. I would really appreciate that. We all yearn for a better form of politics, and we all strive to be better, so let's be better. Our next candidate.
Thanks, Richard. My name is Sean Loney, Lake Idris. It's nice to be back on campus. I got my MA in economics here in 1993. And what I learned doing my MA is that governments can make a big difference with making good policy choices. And I took that away from my time here. I went on to have a career in the provincial government as a civil servant, bring in ethanol mandate, the green building policy, which at the time was the best in Canada, and also greening our building codes. I was very proud of that work when I worked with the provincial government. And I left there to found an organization called BUILD, B-U-I-L-D. Many of you will have heard of it before. BUILD does what I believe to be Canada's defining issue, connecting the people who most need the work with the work that most needs to be done. We've hired hundreds of people with criminal records. What are they doing? Insulating low-income housing, installing water retrofits. I've also co-founded Aki Energy that has installed $25 million worth of renewable energy on First Nations, something that we're very proud of. And of course, Aki Foods, which is growing a lot of healthy food in the Island Lake region, First Nations of Manitoba. And I'm looking forward to bringing this knowledge to the Mayor's Chair, because climate change for us is not a problem. It's the biggest economic opportunity that Winnipeg has ever been offered. And so I'm looking forward to telling you a bit more about our announcement today. And I'm going to pick that up in our next 2-minute round. Thanks very much for coming.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Scott Gillingham. It's a privilege to be here today. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you to all the hosts that have gathered together to put this on. I've been a city councilor for 2 terms now, and I've been really proud of the work that we have done, even during the last 2.5 years through COVID and all those challenges. Really proud of the work that our council has done to emphasize efforts and initiatives related to combating climate change and reducing greenhouse gas emissions. One of the things that we, if you follow the news, work really hard to do is over the last few years is work with the senior levels of government to secure funding for Winnipeg's first 100 electric buses. Also funding to transform and convert and replace the North End Transit Garage to a building that is energy efficient and is suited to accommodate the needs of our changing transit fleet to electrification. We've also secured funding to replace and upgrade the North End sewage treatment plant so that we can reduce phosphorus and nutrient loads to the lake and therefore begin to do a better job of helping to protect Lake Winnipeg. We've also added to $60 million to the budget over the next 4 years to reduce the amount of raw sewage that goes into our river and improve the quality of our rivers as well. Those are all initiatives that I've been proud to be part of over the last few years and committed to continue to work towards more energy efficiency. One of the things that I've committed to is that recently in my campaign as mayor is to have our finance committee, will task them as delegated authority to look at the city of Winnipeg's fleet vehicles. Make a recommendation to convert all the city of Winnipeg's light fleet vehicles to electric vehicles and give us a timeline and a cost estimate for that. I've also said that we would add more bike lanes and close the gaps in our cycling and sidewalk networks so we can have more people on foot and on bikes as well. I'll have more to say in the next round, but I'll leave it there for now.
My name is Chris Classio. We already did the land acknowledgement, but I also want to include a labor acknowledgement. When we think about work and jobs, a lot of the jobs that we have, essential workers, are BIPOC community members, Black, Indigenous, people of color. When I say people of color, I'm also talking about our relatives who are white. And when I think about why I want to run, I will share a letter that I want to read. To young Canadians, all my life I have worked to make things better. Hope and optimism have defined my political career. I continue to be hopeful, optimistic about Canada. Young people have been great sources of inspiration for me. I have met and talked with so many of you about your dreams, your frustrations, your ideas for change. More and more, you are engaging in politics because you want to change things for the better. Many of you have placed your trust in our party. As my time in political life draws to a close, I want to share with you my belief in your power to change this country and this world. There are great challenges before you, from overwhelming nature of climate change to unfairness of the economy that excludes so many from our collective wealth, and the changes necessary to build a more inclusive and generous country. What this country needs today, you need to be at the heart of our economy, our political life, and our plans for the present and the future. And finally, to all Canadians, Canada is a great country, one of the hopes of the world.
want to acknowledge all the candidates for being here. I want to take this opportunity to talk about something a little more personal to me. So climate change is just not a local reality. It's affecting the world as we speak. 1/3 of Pakistan right now, where my ancestors are from, is underwater. Not just because of their own actions, but because of the world's actions. A world where one part pollutes and the other part suffers the consequences. Climate change, or the consequences of, are not just severe weather as we've seen in the Atlantic right now, or floods like we saw in Peguis First Nation, or the fire that we saw in Matthias Cologne Cree Nation. What we sometimes forget is when we are talking about reducing GHG emissions by 2015, which I agree with, or achieving zero emissions, when we talk about electric vehicles without talking about or considering the consequences on human life when we are moving to that, it alarms me because we're missing a major aspect of that movement. We know we have to do it, but we have to consider the human consequences in those actions. It's not just, or else we're going to miss the mark. Food shortages, climate migration, global conflicts are all exasperated by climate change and our inaction, and the ones who will suffer will always be the most vulnerable. You know, I want to talk about so many things, but I just, because this is a little personal to me. When we're talking about climate action, I just want to implore people to think about people. There are homes flooded. There are people who will never have their lives back. There are families who have washed away because of the climate crisis in this world, the most vulnerable people in this world. And if we could just start this conversation from that point, I assure you, it would be much better for all of us. It would be much better for all of us. I thank you for your time. Thank you.
I'm not sure we're supposed to be taking these off the microphone, but the radio station is probably getting very upset over there. So, Nimakoma Kantik Tansei, Nimetane Atawapantikok. Toutes mes relations, merci beaucoup pour accueillir moi ici. Je m'appelle Robert Falcon-Ouellet. You know, I really like questions, and I like asking questions about things which really actually do matter. Things which impact other things. As an Indigenous person, we often think about a holistic way of seeing the world. That's the philosophy. Perhaps not what you might see on certain parts of our city, or what some people might say in the media. Indigenous peoples do actually have a deep and profound philosophy about the world. And so when I think about our city, I ask questions: why are there so many homeless people in our city? Why are so many of them Indigenous? What impact does that have on the quality of life that each and every one of us have? Why do people live in the suburbs versus downtown? Why do people not want to live downtown, want to rub shoulders with our brothers and sisters? And these are actually deep, profound questions because it impacts everything that the city does, the policies and the way that we live our lives. I want to give you simple answers, but there is no simple answers to some of these questions. Because politicians, often we love to check a box, we love to stand in front of a press release and during a press conference and just check that box and say, we've solved it, we've offered $100,000 or $1 million to solve this issue, and we can move on to the thing that really matters to us. But at the end of the day, nothing was actually solved because most of the politicians that I've discovered in my time in politics don't actually talk to each other. They don't talk at the federal level, they don't talk at the provincial level, and they don't talk at the municipal or even with the school trustees. You might say hi to them and shake their hand, but you actually don't do very much. And this is the dying shame in our city, and this is what some of the problems about what's going to prevent us from actually solving some of our most profound challenges that we're facing each and every day.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join us tonight to discuss something that is really important to me personally, the natural environment in which we live. My name is Rick Sean. I've managed and owned a small business in Winnipeg for about 20 years now. And my company, our employees, our customers, and my kids, they've always felt extremely concerned about the way we treat our world. For the last few decades, it felt like a small voice, one that few paid attention to. But today, especially after the past couple of years, people are waking up to the fact that we are treating our world in a really unsustainable manner. We've not done enough in Winnipeg as leaders to be in the front of this. This is why many of my announcements have been focused on the environment, such as a comprehensive plan to protect and enhance the Winnipeg's tree canopy, and adding more green space, both big and small. Our city is strapped for cash and suffering from urban sprawl. I was the first to announce a pledge to remove parking minimums because it's the key to unlocking greater housing density, reducing urban sprawl, and increasing the demand for public transit and active transportation infrastructure. You know, roads do have significant impact on our economy, but I believe we must focus on fixing the roads we have first instead of prioritizing building new ones. And our move to vehicle electrification, I agree. But it needs to be done in a way that makes most sense. Modal shift in getting people out of cars, building a city where people can bike and walk for short trips, will have the most immediate effect. And finally, implementing a composting program, because we've been talking about it in the city for over a decade, are things that we can do to make a huge impact in lowering our GHG emissions. Every policy that I announce must be pragmatic and balanced. We need policy in Winnipeg that pushes our city forward in a realistic way towards great change. Each policy must have a social and financial component that benefits all Winnipeggers, and as your mayor, I will bring this change to City Hall. Thank you.
Thank you all for being here. It's a little bit short. What's going on here? My name is Don Woodstock. I'm a business owner and I'm an environmentalist at heart. I'm going to tell you about what I have done. I'm the guy who got the city to change from garbage day to recycling. That was my initiative, my idea. I've also lobbied very hard for the banning of plastic bags. I see today something my wife and I and a handful of people started in 2009. Walmart and Sobeys banned plastic bags. I pinched myself and said, man, honey, did we started that? Thank you. I also lobbied the city for the bigger reusable bins that you put your recyclables in. You can see that presentation online. I'm also the one who, when the city was about to ban or dismantle the inner city program for video surveillance system, I went and did a petition, presented it to Harvey, God bless his soul, and we had that passed to be extended. The first set of electric buses were built after I went to Jim Randall and asked him, why are we buying diesel buses when New Flyer built electric buses right here? After that, the province agreed, and Jim Randall gave me a thank you in the legislature. Homes for Heroes Foundation and I met in Ottawa 2018, and he said what a joke our city is because Mayor Bowman and Scott Gillingham turned them away. I, with my stubbornness and disgusting frame of mind, thinking that it was a good policy, and I invited them back here. Today, Homes for Heroes is building right here in the city. Part of what a lot of people do is that they end up talking, and for me it's action. And actions speak louder than words. I am the very few people who, my words may not come out right, but my actions are sincere because I'm not a quitter. I fight, I push, and I do it on my own time and my own dime. Thank you.
Thank you so all very, very much. We're going to reverse the flow here. So, Don, you're going to go first on this. And so there are 5 questions. We've asked each candidate to answer just one. And so the 5 questions, I'll very briefly say that the question number 1 is the City of Winnipeg's Community Energy Investment Roadmap calls for an investment of $23 billion over the next 30 years to achieve zero emissions by 2050. Would you support this goal? That's question 1. Number 2 is that same report calls for the full electrification of road vehicles, including Winnipeg Transit, increasing the share of trips made by transit or active transportation. How would you support these goals? That's number 2. Number 3 is our Winnipeg 2045 development plan calls for more green space and natural areas in the city of Winnipeg to protect and enhance the natural environment and mitigate climate change impacts. How would you support these goals? That's 3. 4 is our Winnipeg 2045 development plan includes the goal of good health and well-being. How would you support public health measures to address climate change and foster a healthier and more resilient Winnipeg? And finally, the report calls for strategies designed to address inequity and energy poverty. How would you incorporate a social environmental justice lens in the work you do on City of Winnipeg Council to represent the many perspectives and needs of your constituents? Now, we've asked, the 26 groups have asked each candidate to take 2 minutes to answer one of those questions. And then we're going to get to your questions. Remember, use the QR code. We're tabulating that. You'll be able to vote on the questions. We'll get to that. So again, another round, 2 minutes. We ask, and you can call me Richard, if I may use your first names as we go on from this. Thank you so very much. Don, you've got the floor for 2 minutes. Go ahead, please.
Thank you again. The Community Energy Investment Roadmap is detailed, extensive, and deserves some accolades and applause to you, my friend. Kurt and I know each other for years, decades almost. But if there's one thing I learned as a businessman is that COVID have taught me is we cannot keep spending like the Justin Trudeau era. Right, Glenn? We have to learn to consolidate. So a lot of these ideas, and I mentioned it to Kurt, is like, I'm like, spending all of this money, where we're getting it from. So part of the problem is we end up selling our debt. Glenn, we started something which Mayor Sam Katz continued, and my Bowman, as well as our dear Finance Minister, Finance Chair, Scott Gillingham approved, which is to sell our debt. What that is that we end up saddling our children and our grandchildren with monies. We're still paying for the bridge when Glenn was here, based on the debts that were sold. So I want to do something different. As a businessman, I want to find a way to open up Winnipeg and to be business like never before. Business, jobs, and education. This will add a valuable boost to our economy and will give us the resources we adequately need for housing, poverty, mental health, drug addiction, just to name a few. We need our youths to be engaged into sports and recreational facilities. The inner city program pledge that I have done is merely to look at all the inner city homes and do what we can to get those working again with 7 green plans. Guys, we're going through a tough time. It's going to happen. Don't make nobody tell you otherwise. We have to tighten our belts. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Rick, you're up.
Hey, thank you. I'm really excited to talk about number 2 today, about transit, active transportation, and electrification of Winnipeg's vehicle fleet. So I want to start off by saying that I frequently use transit myself, my wife, my family, and my bike to get around the city when kids bike to school, and to and from my small business downtown. So I know the value of having a public and active transportation system that works, because I don't rely exclusively on my vehicle to get around the city. Now, I know lots of you are probably transit users and bike users, and this is an issue near and dear to my heart, and one of the reasons that pushed me to run for mayor in the first place. Modal shift is one of the most impactful ways we can reduce our footprint, getting people out of cars and changing their method of transportation. First, I believe the only way we are going to get people out of their cars is frequent bus service. This is the most important part of the transit system. No one likes standing around for a bus that doesn't come. This is the part of the master transit system that has to be prioritized. And second, I also have a plan to make our active transportation system better by doubling the current budget, which is the bare minimum, focusing on closing gaps in the network, scrapping our bike registry, and making it easier to find your way around the city on a bike. There are no excuses, in my opinion, for not improving our active transportation network. And finally, I believe in moving towards electrification. That being said, and as I just mentioned, the most important way we can make transit better is by increasing the frequency now. I know some candidates have promised and talked about electrification in a very short time frame by 2030, but I do oppose that. It would mean disposing of buses that your taxes have paid for before the end of their life and their end of their service. Me personally, I don't think it's very smart business decision making, and I want to get you to where you want to go efficiently and on time. We can do better. That's why I, Rick Sean, believe in frequent service to get you where you want to go on time, better active transportation, and transitioning our fleet to electric when it makes the most sense to do so.
Thank you. Robert?
So as I was talking previously, I was talking about this issue that impacts everything that happens in our city, homelessness. Who wants to take the bus? How many of our fellow citizens take the bus in 1982 compared to today? It's actually less. It's incredible. It's been going down. That's a terrible, terrible thing to happen in a city. While other cities are seeing more people trying to take transit, we're seeing it go down. So how do we actually get people to want to take the bus? We need to make sure that it's safe, that it's affordable, so that all people can take it. Yes, affordable is very important, and it's also clean. That there's good frequency, that it's efficient, that it does move people from A to B in an efficient way. And this thing is the backbone of a public transportation system. That's the only way we're going to get cars off the street. If we want to reduce greenhouse gases, this is the most efficient way to do it, is to make sure that the buses are the absolute best that we have. And I know we can have pie-in-the-sky dreams about electrification and many other things, and I have to agree with Rick. But at the same time, we've already paid for that infrastructure. And to repurpose a bus and to get rid of it and to sell it off to get another bus, it's just not economically viable, and it's not good for the environment either. So let's make sure that we use the infrastructure that we actually have. There's also many other things that I'm very in favor of. It's rail relocation. I want to study and understand what the actual costs are on rail relocation. Our province has been talking about this for generations, and we keep holding up BRT and other ideas because we can't seem to have the numbers. Now, I've got a commitment from the federal government when I was a member of parliament to actually do a study, but it requires civic leadership to actually ask for that study, and they will pay for it if we ask for it. And then once we have the numbers, then we're actually able to put forward what we actually want to do for our city. If we want to have LRT, or if it's too expensive to do something else, or to do the BRT lines, or to move the rail lines, or to keep the rail lines, or to reconvert the rail yards into a park, and to redo public housing and other infrastructure. That way. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to answer number 5, but I don't want to read it because I don't want to waste my time. So I just want to acknowledge the fact that the first question acknowledges to achieve zero emission by 2015, we want to, or 2050, the full electrification of road vehicles, including Winnipeg Transit, increasing the share of trips and everything else. So I recognize and I acknowledge the fact that we all talk about EV, we talk about electric vehicles, we at times talk about the infrastructure that's required for it. But when we're talking about number 5, which also states, how would you incorporate a social and environmental justice lens to not only that work, but all work, I have a little bit of an issue. Because, we have to ensure that when we're changing our fleets to electric vehicles, we're also acknowledging the fact that during the production of electric vehicles, there's going to be collateral damage. There's going to be people in this world who are building, there's going to be extraction of lands, there's going to be all sorts of things that are going to happen. And what I would prefer we did, or what I would encourage all of us to agree to do, is when we are moving towards electric vehicles, we prepare regulations. And despite some limitations, that would require batteries or manufacturers of these vehicles to identify and respond to human rights and environmental abuses in their production. And I say this sincerely. I personally believe in electric vehicles. I believe that we must do this. I believe it's the way forward. It's a way that we can reduce emissions. But without acknowledging this other piece, there's going to be people in this world who are collateral damage. There's going to be lands that are going to be extracted. There's going to be children who are producing these batteries. And if anyone says that that is not true, they obviously don't know the history of the way these things are produced. So that's my position on that. Thank you.
Actions without substance is only blame. I'll answer number 5. I call myself a civic practitioner and a policy entrepreneur. For me, the policy that I always think about when I talk about entrepreneurship is the idea of UBI, basic income. For me, there's a new concept called a calibrated basic income. It's based on this notion of consumer monetary theory. I've been looking up on this concept of what a basic income is, and people assume that it's an answer to poverty. No, it's an answer to solving our systematic systems that oppress every individual in this room and outside this room. For me, one of my commitments is to change the property tax system that we have into a land value tax system. This will actually make us rethink our relationship to BIPOC communities, Black, Indigenous, people of color. I've worked with urban Indigenous young people in the inner city for 7 years. Number 7 represents a gift. And the gift is me being able to stand in this room, look at some of my heroes, and every candidate on this floor. They inspire me to do better, be better, and dream for a bigger and brighter future, not just for our city, but for everyone in this room and in the world. We can do it. It's all about engaging each and every one of us candidates, because each and every one of these candidates on this stage has inspired me to run for public office. And everyone in this room, online, you inspire all of us. So I want to say thank you. I appreciate you. I love you. But most of all, I respect you.
I'm going to answer number 1, which talks about the City of Winnipeg's community energy investment roadmap. I was proud as a councillor to be supportive of and adopt that new initiative. One of the ways that we can do it is to take the current municipal accommodations department and convert it. I will convert it to a green properties and green power agency with a focus on retrofitting City of Winnipeg buildings and doing it through an ROI analysis of the buildings. The City of Winnipeg has a large portfolio of buildings all across our city, and some of them were built a long, long time ago. They are not energy efficient. They are emitting greenhouse gases. We can do better. We will do better. We can tap into so much funding that is available. It's the Green Initiative funding that is available, both private sector and public sector funding. And by converting our department into a green properties and green power agency, we can draw down some of those fundings and attract that investment so we can make those conversions to our buildings. We can also look at solar power where it's appropriate to power some of our buildings. We can look at geothermal where appropriate to be part of the retrofit as well. We can do that and thereby reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. I've also talked about, though, but to reduce greenhouse gas emissions is to follow the transit master plan. I was very proud as a councillor to endorse and support the Winnipeg's transit master plan. Now we can build that out. Now we need to build that out. And one of the ways we need to do it is to make sure those 100 buses that we have secured funding for hit the road and get to be put in place and be part of the City of Winnipeg's transit fleet. I've also committed to adding in the next few years 11 more buses per year, 33 buses over the next few years, so that our frequency and reliability of transit service is increased and better. People talk right now about the transit service and are dropping numbers. Let's not forget that over the last 2.5 years, because of the pandemic, ridership dropped. Now it is picking up again. We need to make sure the service is available for people who use it and need it. Thank you.
the most important number, I think, in the Community Energy Investment Roadmap study is 100,000. 100,000 person years of employment in Winnipeg. That is a very, very exciting proposition for us. How do we get there? Well, you can go to SeanForWinnipeg.com. And today, just as one example, we announced 40,000 cost-saving, job-creating electric heat pumps here in Winnipeg by the year 2030. We've also announced a significant citywide solar program. Put solar on your roof, community solar projects on city property throughout the city that we could all invest in as individuals. We've also announced a very exciting metro mobility idea around transit. You take your finger, you press your phone, you summon a white wheelchair accessible van. It might be a co-op, like a Peg City car co-op kind of model. Comes to your house, it's a virtual bus stop, because depending on where your neighbors are and how you've hailed it will depend on where you catch it. It whisks you out to the arterial, electric, fast-moving, frequently coming electric buses that take you where you want to go every 10 minutes or maybe even less. And we'll wonder, why would we want a car in Winnipeg? It's a car-optional city because we have a fantastic transit system. But we can't have the transit system you see in Toronto, but these are what cities are doing around the world of our size. And finally, I just wanted to mention an announcement we made on Home Street. I was standing on a stump, one of the trees that have been replaced in over 3 years. It's a tree trust, similar to what is happening in Minneapolis and Cleveland. And we're very excited about a very new idea. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks. My name is Jenny Montclair, and a lot of the questions in the 5 that were presented talk about the health and well-being of Winnipeggers. And the health and well-being of Winnipeggers is actually the thing that I care the most about. Today in Winnipeg, one of the reasons that our transit system sucks so much, which it does, is because a lot of people have moved into our bus shelters. And a lot of people who have nowhere to go during the day like to ride on the bus because it's warm in there. The system isn't safe. And it turns off a lot of would-be transit riders. I know it certainly turns me off. And actually, as a candidate for Mayor of Winnipeg, the thing that I'm most concerned about is the health and well-being of Winnipeggers. And there's 2 ways that I'm really, really focused on addressing that. One is with affordable housing. And the best thing that we can do, the greatest act of reconciliation that we can do for the overrepresented Aboriginal people that are currently homeless in Winnipeg, is to provide them all with dignified, affordable housing. And I am the only candidate for mayor that has put forward a plan that is doable, executable, and can be done today. And when I'm mayor of Winnipeg, that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to seize every derelict house in this city. I am going to auction them off to private landlords, and I'm going to have them turned into affordable housing so that we can house everyone in this city. Thank you. And furthermore, jobs and money matter. And as candidate for mayor, I'm very focused on raising private sector wages and creating more higher paying jobs in the city, because lifting people out of poverty is the single greatest thing that we can do to ensure the health and well-being of all of us. Thank you.
That's not a good sign. Thank you again. I would argue that the most important one is number 3, green space, and trees particularly. The most important word for me in city planning and in the environment is the word enough. You hear a lot of candidates tell you about things they've done and would like to do, but the question I always come back to, if it doesn't keep us under 1.5, or proportionally under 1.5 degrees temperature change, then it's not enough. Because we're not looking for varying degrees of disaster. We're looking for sufficiency to end the crisis. And Winnipeg is the perfect city to do it. So what I would like to focus on is trees and green space, because I think that there is nothing that human beings have ever wrought that is more beautiful or useful than anything that Mother Nature has made, and probably the perfect climate change fighter is a tree. and that we have to shift. Hopefully, more people can get on board with that. It's the least controversial one. And given the climate crisis and the need to get major reductions sooner, when you map it all out, if my friends at Project Drawdown are right, you can't do anything locally that's faster than that. But we have to treat it as important as everything else, certainly as important as the roads that are concrete. So what I'm proposing is that we make trees basic infrastructure. That the city create a natural capital budget. That the natural capital budget would be in a ratio for every dollar we spend on pouring concrete and paving things over, we would have to be required in a formula, and that's going to be part of my announcement, so I don't get all the details, that we would have to invest in the natural capital budget, and the first thing would be trees. And the targets would be set to get massive greenhouse gas reduction. Now, I think this is complementary to some of the things that Sean, because there's a lot of other good ideas here, but my focus shift is, if we're not prepared to treat our trees as more basic infrastructure and fund it as a priority than anything else, then we're missing the point.
Well, I'm going to just start from there. I also picked number 3. And one thing I want you to know tonight, I'm going to say some stuff. Part of my plan is to have more green spaces along Main Street. And before we can do that, we need to address homelessness, addictions, and mental health. And that is one thing I want you to know tonight. If you have time, please check idrisforbeyond.com. I'm committed to resolve that issue in our city. And if I don't resolve that in the next 4 years, you don't have to vote for me. I'm saying this. My word is my bond. I'm not here to play. I'm here to make a positive change in our city. Now, I'm going to say something here in terms of what I have, because I have 2 minutes. One of the things is to resolve dumping sewage into our rivers. We need 2 approaches, grey infrastructure and green infrastructure, which is one of those things I have to do. And the other one is to protect our forests as well, just like what my friend has already said. We are going to collaborate with some agencies as well. We have to plant trees. When you cut it down, you not plant 2. We'll also receive some information about that. Then another thing I have here is to collaborate with some agencies and also investigate, how to convert, landfills into biomass. I'm an environmental engineer as well from one side. And another thing is to encourage composting in organizations and households as well. Even there is one organization I've already worked for, they've already started embracing that, and we need to also continue to do that. Well, in a nutshell, I will just encourage you, don't give up on the city. I will leave you with this. If you aspire to acquire what you desire, and it backfires, don't retire, but refire until you acquire what you desire. I believe you are going to get there. Thank you. And God bless.
Can I use that at some point?
Okay, but you can use it if you're allowed.
Thank you very much. And thank you everyone here for your patience and for listening, because it's very important. Now, we have our top questions. Now, what I'm going to do, though, at some point, because this is the old kind of talk show host in me, is that I always kind of do things to what's called avoid stacking. Back in the day, what you could do was you could call a radio station, you could ask the candidate questions, and the candidates would always have their ringers call the radio station. So those wearing red T-shirts tonight could potentially stack the system, right? So we're going to be mindful of that, and that's why Kurt pays me the big bucks, nothing, to do this. So what this requires is a little cooperation from all the candidates. I will be as fair as possible, but if I'm not fair, feel free to chew me out outside following the debate, because not the first time, won't be the last time. All right, first question. What is your plan to make Winnipeg a green city? This is a question for all of you for running for the mayor. We went this way, we went that way. I'm going to go in the middle and start with you, Chris. Take 1 minute And if you go beyond 1 minute, I'm just going to interrupt you. Take a minute.
Okay, I try to learn to speak with what I know. One of the things about making the city green is when we talk about being a green city, what does that actually mean? As an individual actually running for mayor and talking about my ambitions to run for public office, we see a lot of politicians not changing their behaviors of how they campaign. For my campaign, one of the biggest differences is I don't have any paper or lawn signs. And I think that is an example of leading by example. We have lived in the world with COVID, and so our whole idea of how we are in spaces like this is very crucial to thinking about how do we use our resources and our wealth in a way that affects and supports everyone in this room. That's the question of what it means to be green and a green city to me.
Thank you very much. Who's next? Who wants to go next? Who's going to go next? Jenny, go.
All right, okay, sorry.
Jenny is next, and then Ron.
Thank you.
That's okay.
Sorry, Rhonda, I didn't know, girlfriend. Okay. 2 women running for mayor, just saying. So, you know, we talk about a green city, and there's lots of really awesome pie-in-the-sky, long-term visionary thinking that we could do. But I actually think that the single greatest thing that we could do to green our city is to pick up the garbage. The streets are filthy. They're littered with trash, particularly around where all the homeless people live. And you know what I think we need to do? Find them dignified housing so that they can live their own version of a happy life, and we can pick up the garbage in this town. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Rana. I'm going to speed things up. We're going to put 45 seconds. Rana, you're next. You want to be next? Okay.
Sorry.
We're going to go 45, and then we'll go there. See? And we'll
and
auction off people.
And I won't even stand up. So my version or my vision of a green city is basically a smart city. They're sustainable communities. That means we begin to design and plan cities and buildings and communities in a more holistic manner. That means we encourage green space. That means we encourage trees, not because of anything, but because they are also a part of how communities thrive. Intelligent energy management and movement of electrons, like the smart grid concept. Implementation of green and digitally connected technology, including greener buildings. Transportation and smart roads, food and waste management. Holistic approach all around. That is the only way to have a green city and a green economy. Thank you.
I usually don't like arguing with people, but I must take issue with one of those comments. I don't believe homeless people want to live their version of the good life. I think that we all grow up wanting to have a good life. I think we were all raised like that. I will say one of the most important things that we could be doing is using federal dollars such as the National Park Program to create an urban national park in the city of Winnipeg. I was proud to participate in those debates early on. And this is something we could be doing either at Assiniboine Park or even downtown along the Red River, and protecting those river spaces, those green spaces, so we can provide a beautiful space for all our children. And if
Robert,
we still have time
really
is up.
appreciate that.
Oh,
Glenn,
moving on.
So, 45 seconds really quickly. I would take a philosophical paradigm shift and stop treating water and rainwater like pollution. There are one of the biggest, most successful changes going on in cities. Our mayors are getting up and declaring around the world, rain is not pollution, and putting it in pipes and wasting your tax dollars to do it at the scale we do it is ridiculous. And even in, there's a major city in Texas that's 10 years, 20 years ahead of us. Save money, rainwater is useful, and redesign and rethink our infrastructure and our neighborhoods to retain and use and celebrate rainwater.
Get good. Gillingham is next. Gillingham. Scott.
I committed to reducing the pruning cycle to 7 years. It's way too long right now. And every public tree, every public, the budget increased for forestry this year. Every public, it's a matter of public record. And every public tree that has to be cut down because of disease, we would replace it with 2 trees. The final thing is community organizations are outstanding in wanting to plant trees. and I'd find a way to work with community organizations to reduce the red tape so that more community organizations can plant trees faster.
Don, you're up. Rick, you're on deck.
Okay, so it took 2 years to lobby the city to change from garbage day to recycle day. I am very happy to walk into an environment like this and see a recyclable bin. I go to stores, malls, and such and see. A green city starts with our habits. And as long as we be able to do small things, we'll eventually get there. Because at the end of the day, we have to balance this with our way of life. We have to balance this with cost. We can't just think pie in the sky idea and believe it will happen. But I believe in Winnipeg, and I believe in getting people to come along with an idea, even if it takes 2 years. The banning of plastic bag was never easy. The names they call me, today everybody now is wearing a reusable bag all over the place. Because that is action. That's how you get people involved. And the city will be greener and more sustainable as long as we get the people involved and get everybody engaged in it.
Don, thank you. Rick, you're up.
I just wanted to make a comment on the garbage. I do also feel like our city is really full of trash right now. But I would suggest that it's not just where homeless people live. I personally have spent about 100 hours at least this year working on different teams cleaning up garbage. And we have a major issue in our city with garbage. We have the total lack of ability to go around and clean up the garbage. In the spring, it was an absolute disaster. That is one thing I will really, really focus on among all the other things that we've talked about tonight.
Thank you very much. Who's next? Sean?
I wasn't going to talk about it. We'll talk garbage.
You don't have to, because look at the question.
You're eating into my time. Curitiba, Brazil, the mayor there, Jeremy Lerner, they figured out using complementary currency, people bringing in garbage bags and paying them in what? Seats on the transit bus. We need to connect what we have to what we need. Thank you.
Yes. So from my own perspective, I'm going to apply tree protection, during road construction, and we also have to introduce, new green spaces as well. It's not only about creating, but you have to also sustain, and that's my plan. Thank you.
Next question is, organic waste has a considerable emissions impact when landfilled. Winnipeg is behind most other major cities. Will you prioritize the implementation of a citywide composting program? Who's going first on that one? Rick, go ahead.
I'll take this one first. So the answer is yes. I recently ran a number of reports to the city. They go back a long time. We've been talking about this. There is a study, there's a pilot project. We're always doing these things. We don't need that. There's a lot of other cities who have been really successful with this, and we just need to get it done. The way we structure our city is the way we change behavior of those who are living in it.
Who's next? Scott? John, you want to go?
Sure. The only reason why we haven't had composting in the city is because I've never been elected. Because, guys, let's face it, I've done the plastic bag thing, check. I've done the reusable bag thing, check. I have done getting people to start increasing the capacity at home and lobbying City Hall for the blue bins, check. When I did it, we were doing 40% reusable, 40% of the citizens were engaged in the recycling program. Today there's 98%. I believe that we will do it, but you have to elect somebody who has done something on this issue, and don't elect people who have talked about it only.
Don, thank you very much. Always be careful when politicians talk about composting and someone like me is involved that can comment on stuff like that. Who's next? Glenn.
So just really quickly, I think there's some real value in it, but I'd like to look at it. I started a program in our little condo where we have composters. When I and two other city councilors liberated the boulevards so we could all use them, and ours are filled with community gardens now. And we use the compost to grow our plants, and then we take the plants and the waste back to the compost. So we have a perfect local redistributive system. So I think we have to look at redistributive on-site water, compost things before we start shipping stuff across. But for some people, that's not possible. So I do agree with Rick that this is something that needs to be looked at, but not exclusively.
Okay, Rana's next, then Sean, then Scott. Go ahead, Rana.
I would ask Winnipeggers to, I think the question is about, I'm going to change it to landfills for a second here. I would encourage Winnipeggers to imagine a city without landfills, a place where our resources are carefully harnessed and efficiently processed, so much so that we are effectively reducing our waste to zero relatively. And that future is actually possible. So what I would propose to do is work on diverting all possible landfill waste to energy facilities. It's an infrastructure cost, but it's a way to do that. Thank you.
Sean.
I just want to introduce you to Jessica Floresco, who is one of my campaign co-managers, and she is the general manager of Mother Earth Recycling. And composting is one, but there are 8 different waste streams that we can convert into, won't shock you, jobs, especially for people who currently don't have access to the labor market, something we're very excited about.
Scott.
I was glad as a councillor to work with Mother Earth Recycling so that we can, divert mattresses to the great work that is done. I'm on council. We did have a pilot project that just finished on composting, and now the report will be done. What I want to do is make sure we look at the analysis that has been done so we know the cost, how it could work, where it could work, and what the implementation timeline would be. I want to know that before making any commitment to anything as far as timelines or anything like that.
Anybody else? Going once? Robert?
So once again, I have to take issue. I don't think homeless people just want to go around collecting garbage for a bus ticket to get somewhere. I think we should be providing people with jobs and really thinking long term about this issue. It's not just a simple, off the cuff remark that's going to solve it. When I was in the military and I served 27 years, I started a recycling program in the military base in Valcartier concerning batteries and trying to set up composting. And when the commanding officer said to me, well, yeah, you can do it if you want, but you're the one in charge of it, and you've got to go pick it up. So there's no issue. I don't mind getting my hands dirty. We had a really great time with many of the fellow soldiers going around and actually doing that hard work. And so, as Scott was saying, I think this needs to be studied, but we'll have to also study the whole issue, how much do people actually want to pay for composting? Because it will be a charge that will be additional to their taxes.
Thank you. Jenny?
Thank you very much. And Robert, I'm going to just respond to something that you said earlier about everybody wanting to live a happy life, and I agree with you. And I think the point I wanted to make is that I don't believe that it's up to me or any government or any elected official to prescribe what a happy life looks like to any individual. My version of a happy life might be a little bit different than yours, and that's okay, and it's actually a really good thing. So I just wanted to make that clear. Thank you.
My version of a happy life is keeping us on time. Okay. How do you plan to address raw sewage being dumped by Winnipeg into the Red River? How do you plan on doing that? Sean, you want to go first?
I do.
In 45 seconds, map it out.
So I talked earlier about the Winnipeg Tree Trust, and check it out on our website. But one of the things the Tree Trust would do is to move up the city's current schedule around green infrastructure. And City of Vancouver, for example, has set a target of keeping 90% of the water out of going into the pipes in the first place. And lots of really effective ways of doing that, including rain barrels, rain gardens, rain sharrows, and permeated pavement.
So what happens sometimes is that people will then kind of resist because they all want to have the last word on something. So I'm just going to start calling people out. Robert, you're next.
Obviously, I think most of us are going to say that we support the North End water treatment plants, and I think it's extremely important. I don't think any of our sewage should be going into Lake Winnipeg, but I also think we need to go a step farther and take civic leadership, get the provincial government, federal government, and the South Dakota, North Dakota leadership together to talk about our water basin and what actually happens with all the hog-producing plants that go on in these jurisdictions. And I think that's extremely important because a lot of waste comes out of the hogs and it goes into the water, and that really includes our waterways. And there's also an equity issue related to it because there are a lot of indigenous fishermen in the freshwater marketing corporation that rely on that fishery to support their families, and that lake cannot die.
Yeah. A real quick observation on my part, because we had successive
city councils that diverted dollars that were supposed to go to utilities to ultimately pay to get rid of the combined sewer system to general revenues. And those days added up, and we're paying for it now, I do believe. Next on this, can I pick up? Well, I'll pick on you, Jay. Go ahead.
Thank you. Well, I'd really like to go on this one. So, Richard, you raise an interesting point. There are a couple of men sitting at this table who collectively represent the last 25 years of leadership here in this city. And we had tremendous opportunities over the last decade or so, particularly with record low interest rates and really high construction inflation, which was a great opportunity for us to make substantial infrastructure investments. In fact, we should be coming off the tail end of an infrastructure renaissance in Winnipeg, which would include solving some of our sewage problems. Thanks.
Glenn, you want to have that? Because I think she was pointing the finger towards you.
Yeah. I don't have the time now, but I can list about 30 major projects that we haven't seen since I was mayor. The thing that's really important to me is that there's a lot of good ideas, but the most important job as a mayor is to make the system work to receive those good ideas. So you saw with the Transit Tech Lab, every year we would be doing life cycle procurement, and then doing a call-out, so that some of the ideas that people like Sean have talked about would immediately be procured. Because one of the things that I agree with your idea, because you're now getting into life cycle and innovation-based procurement. So I want to change the entire procurement system to go to an innovation platform, because we have so many innovative companies and people in the city and the community and not-for-profit who can't get in the door to get change. And it's like no one got fired for buying IBM. Now we're buying 20 and 30 and 40-year-old technologies. We have to change to go to innovation procurement, because if we don't do that, none of the ideas that we're getting around here are going to have a home in City Hall.
Thanks, Dan. Go ahead, Chris, very quickly.
Can I quickly say, the problem with our city is the procurement process. The problem is the RFP proposal system. The lowest bid always gets the deal, and that's not always the best deal. And so we need a qualification-based selection process, or a request for qualifications for these companies. This is why we see our money being unused wisely, is this procurement process.
Thank you. Don?
Part of the problem, folks, is that we keep electing people who talk the talk about the environment, and when they get into office, what do? They make sure they look good, sound good, but don't do a crap about it. The fact of the matter is, we had the opportunity years ago to get a partnership going with the federal and provincial government to solve this issue, and the city of Winnipeg, under a good finance chair, did not do a single thing about diverting and making sure we have the finance and the money to do it. And Glenn didn't help us either.
Don, you always look good. Scott?
Well, as the finance chair Don's talking about, I can tell you we just put an extra $60 million into combined sewer overflows. So we're reducing and separating sewers so that less sewage is going into the Winnipeg River system. And so I'm very proud that the last budget included that over the next 4 years. An extra $60 million, $45 million approximately per year over the next several years will go to reduce the amount of sewage going into the river system, and that's as per the requirement of the province of Manitoba. So continue to work with provincial and federal governments to make sure our rivers and lakes are cleaner.
Rana.
Acknowledge the fact that we're talking about years in advance, but most will remember that one of my first announcements was to fast track the North End water treatment plant, because city administrators say that we could run out of capacity in the next 5 to 10 years, meaning there'd be more sewer overflows. This can't be a 20-year plan, this cannot be a 50-year plan, this needs to be an immediate plan, unless we want sewer all over the roads.
Thank you. I'm moving on to one last question, then we're going to get to our closing remarks. Last question here, in your opinion, is the environment connected to urban sprawl? I love this question. Thank you for providing it. If your answer is yes, what actions would you take as mayor to address challenges related to both the environment and urban sprawl? Iris, do you want to take that one first?
So, from my own perspective, when you look at the urban sprawl, and you said, if your answer is yes, what actions would you take as a mayor to address challenges related to both the environment and the urban sprawl? From my own perspective, in terms of urban sprawl, what I'm thinking of doing is to encourage more of infill housing rather than to spread out. Because right now, what I see is most people, they cannot gain access to transportation system because you are spreading out. And by the time you come in, you can easily, move around the city. If you don't have a car, what do you do? So it is a bit challenging. I believe that it is something that we need to look into. Thank you.
Robert, you want to go next on this?
Second time you called me out quick there. No, it's good. I think the main issue we need to address is this whole issue surrounding corruption in our city, surrounding land developers, and how they actually fund and bankroll a lot of municipal campaigns. And I think it's an absolute shame for democracy in our city. And to do that, I think we should limit the amount of donations you're actually allowed to make. I think they should not be $1,500, because I don't think the average citizen has that. It should be $400. And they should 75% back. Now, one of the things I would like to address as well is surface parking lots downtown, encourage downtown development, make sure that we keep a lot of newcomers who are used to urban environments down in our center, of the heart of our city, make sure that we look after our fellow citizens who live downtown, the homeless, but also all the residents, the seniors, make sure we have a downtown bus line that actually is free and efficient and affordable for more people. And also, just finally, get those surface parking lots developed and tax those speculators who are just holding on to those parking lots, not doing anything with them because they're holding up our city.
Rick.
Yeah, short answer is yes, definitely. I mean, pretty much many of my policies that I've announced so far have been about urban design and sprawl, and parking minimums that cause buildings to expand. We can't build as much on land, so we keep expanding out and out. Just recently was working with a person who was near my business who tried to build a housing complex, low-income housing. And first of all, it takes way too long to push the process through. And this is housing for seniors. They want to create it. So we need to build more density in our downtown. In other cities, people want to live downtown. They will in ours as well.
Sean, you want to go next?
Last week I announced in Scott's writing, we're picking on you tonight, the Fix It First policy. So instead of building $1 billion of new roads, expanding Kenniston and also extending the Chief Peguis Trail, put the money into fixing the infrastructure that we already have. And also on infill housing, we announced a considered contractor program to reduce the tensions between contractors and neighborhoods, and make neighborhoods, give them some incentives so that they can see how awesome infill housing can be if done respectfully.
Okay, part of the problem with this whole thing is we talked about these things for the last how many years. And because there is a system that is so unfair, you have certain developers, because they're close to the system, they understand it, and the government of the day gave them a lot of leeway to do things. And the little guy who's trying to do the same thing cannot do it. And they end up with all kind of issues. We have to be building in. We can't be building out. And unless we start leveling the playing field, so a developer A, even though you may know the mayor, can do, developer B who do not know the mayor needs to be able to be done.
Thank you. Jenny?
Thanks. Well, just a point of clarity on the bid process at the City of Winnipeg, the mayor actually doesn't read the bids and the mayor doesn't get to decide who wins them. But regardless of that, I actually, Sean, I think this is a point of contrast between you and I actually think that we need to get the Chief Peguis Trail built. I think we need to do it as fast as we can. It's been being studied since the 60s. I understand that some candidates are committing to further studies on whether or not we need to open up that big section of Northwest Winnipeg to economic development and housing. And I happen to think that we do, and if I'm mayor of Winnipeg, it's one of the things we're going to do first. Thanks.
As I said, mayors can affect the foundational decisions. This is pretty simple. Measure twice, cut once. Development should only occur if it is financially self-sustainable.
And the number of hectares of land, kilometers of pipe and road that it takes to sustain one job or one house is your best indicator of that. And we have gone through the roof in using more land, more pipes than that to house a person and house a job. It's insane. Well, we've lost 88,000 people from inner city neighborhoods. So I'm going to introduce something called value planning, which is measure twice, and no project would ever be approved until it's gone through that process, which is rapid, quick, and a lot of changes will occur in the capital budget if we do that, and we'll start growing the tax base and reducing the tax burden. It will have one of the biggest financial impact on the long-term financial sustainability of the city. So measure twice, cut once.
Scott.
I announced that as mayor, I would move towards Portage Avenue and Pembina Highway. All the C2 properties, as of right, could build up, could build multifamily and increase the density. Those are transit corridors, and when the master plan gets implemented, there'll be increased transit corridors. And so with no parking minimums, property owners along Portage Avenue and Pembina Highway as the two starting corridors could build up. And so we'd have retail or commercial on the bottom, maybe a story of office spaces, and then above there, residential. It would increase the density, more people living in close proximity to transit.
Ronna?
I find it alarming that when we're talking about development, I'm the only candidate who committed to continuing the lawsuit against the police headquarters. Millions of dollars of Winnipeg taxpayer dollars are somehow gone away, and somehow we don't want to all just agree that that is the right decision to make. How do we talk about transparency if we're not going to do that? How are we all committing to accountability if we won't even take that one step? There are people who got away with egregious things in this city when it came to police headquarters. So I would love it for other candidates to all also agree to that we will continue on that police headquarters lawsuit. Get to the end.
We have to get to closings. So I have in my if you want to talk to him afterwards, you can. Absolutely. So I'm going to shuffle this up. We're going 1 through 10 over here. And you'll have a minute to kind of wrap things up. Yeah, we're not here all night. We're not here all night. If you want to stay, I'll stay. But no, I can't stay. No, I know you got places to go, John. I know you got places to go. All right, so I'm doing this like this. So I've just shuffled them, and so number 9. I think Rick, you're number 9. Number 1 in my heart, but number 9. So you have
Thank
1
you.
minute. Go
Appreciate
ahead.
that. Well, the first thing I as I sit here and listen to all the candidates talk, it's one thing I really wanted to say is that each person here has a really important part of this process. And I know that this was one of the major reasons why I put my name forth to run for mayor, is to be part of this process and make sure that we are having the conversations and pushing the change that each and every one of you want to see in this city. And so I also think it's really important that we all remember that, we take this serious every single day, and that we push each other to change. And I've been really challenged by all these candidates here, at the table. The next mayor needs to be really willing to listen and to bring the right people to the table. They need to be somebody who is open, who can listen to all perspectives, and make sure that we make the right decisions. Too many times I've seen great plans, and actually through this whole process I've spent, lots of hours reading tons of plans that we have. They are great, but we need to execute on them better.
Thank you very much. Next up is number 3. Jenny, you're up.
Well, thanks again. I really enjoyed my time here tonight, telling you about the vision that I have for a city of opportunity with higher paying jobs and money and dignity for everyone. So I'm really excited about the possibility of being able to execute on that, and there's a couple things that I would just like to make clear. I think that we have a couple of choices moving forward. We could spend a lot of time, thinking about fancy plans and social justice warrior types of things, or we could just get on with the job and provide a really great city of opportunity for everybody that lives here. So thanks very much. I've had a really great time.
Up next is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Robert, number 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Rana, sorry. The counting thing, you know.
So difficult. You know what? I appreciate everyone coming out tonight, and you know, I just want to kind of reflect on something that Rick just said. Each of us have put our names forward in this race, and we all bring different perspectives. And me specifically, I come from a world that has a very different lens. I view the world in a very different lens. I'm different. My life view is very different. And at times, as we move forward, I would challenge Winnipeggers to really think about why is it that some of our voices might be muted in the future? Why would it be that we wouldn't be able to engage in some conversations? It's not about win, lose, or draw, but it is about discourse. It is about conversations. It is about moving dialogue forward. It is about, on the one hand, not saying that we want representation, and on the other hand, muting us when the opportunity arises. So I'm not going to go much more into that, but I would just ask Winnipeggers to really reflect on the upcoming debates and what they really mean when some of us are muted out. Thank you very much.
Next up is number 2, Mr. Murray, Glenn Murray.
One of the most important things a mayor does is ensure that you make a difference. Pardon me? Oh, correct. Okay.
Don't worry. Don't be distracted.
You know, I grew up in the city as a young gay kid, in the back lanes, running a needle exchange program. Being taught and told that I would never be a mayor, that I could never be a father, that I could never be any of the things that I want. And we live in a city where that's a problem. It doesn't matter who you love, how old you are. It doesn't matter about any of your human characteristics. You can make a difference. You know, I used to stand in front of City Hall because on some very fundamental human rights issues. And I looked at a friend of mine one day and I said, why are we out here protesting? I'm going to run for mayor to make a difference. And I was laughed and joked about we could never happen. But I just want each and every one for you to realize that there is nothing you can't do. Do not let other people define you. Do not let the stereotypes and the judgments that marginalize people limit you, and don't do that to people. I will be a mayor that will work not to be your voice, but to lift your voices up. I will be a mayor who will try to get you to be a candidate one day for change. Thank you.
Number 10 is Don Woodstock, I believe. Don, you're up.
Thank you, folks, for the opportunity to speak to you again. DonWoodstock.com has that information that we have going on. And I am committed not to sell any more debt. And the reason why that is so, as a businessman, I see the need for tightening our belts for the next little while. Glenn Murray is a professor at that, and Scott Gillingham, these guys, what they do is that they sell debt. You realize that we have 50 years worth of debt that we're going to be paying for all of the big projects. I will be at City Hall, because you're mayor, for 12 hours every month to talk to you, something that has never been done. I'm one of the few candidates you call my number, you're talking to me, despite the fact that I've been threatened, and threatened with life. My wife doesn't even know that. But I didn't want to tell you until tonight, for those who think that I'm racist for just pointing out the obvious. But we're going to make it through this, threat and all. Thank you.
Robert, you're up next.
Hello, mes amis, my friends. 152 years ago, we had a leader in this province who brought together 12 people from English parishes and 12 people from Francophone parishes, and they spoke Gaelic, French, English. And they built a society, they put forward a Bill of Rights for what our society would look like. And it was supposed to be a society which was inclusive, which brought people together. And unfortunately, we got away from that for a very long period of time. This is an opportunity for us to fulfill that dream of that great leader, Lou Riel, to make sure that we fulfill that vision about what Canada should be, to demonstrate that it doesn't matter who you are or where you're from, that we can build an inclusive society. And this in Winnipeg is so important because we have people who are Anglophones, we have people who are newcomers, French and Indigenous peoples. And if we can solve reconciliation in our city, we can solve it anywhere else in our country.
Well, one thing I want you to know tonight, if you are looking for results, transparency, accountability, honesty, this is the guy. Finally, I'm not here just to run, but I'm here to serve. Think about it. If you can see my heart, you will all vote for me. I want to change our city and move it to an enviable height. I see a new Winnipeg. Thanks, and God bless.
Oh, you know what? Yeah, because she left. You're six, that's right. See? It's the counting thing.
For me, my major concern and a big part of my ambitions to run for office of the mayor is to fulfill my treaty relationship with Turtle Island, the planet that I stand on, and my treaty obligation with the urban Indigenous young people that I spent with for 7 long years. Without them, I wouldn't be on this ballot of this 2022 municipal election. They taught me that honoring creation stories of the land is the first step to reconciliation. The second step is acknowledging your own personal and sacred story. And the last step is the realization that the only real sentiment and gift you receive in life is not the past, not the future, not a moment, but being present with the people in your life. Thank you to all the heroes in my life that I'm sitting on stage with. You are my inspiration, and I thank you, I appreciate you, I love you, and keep on doing the hard work.
Like Jenny kind of, yeah.
You're having a hard time with that, Richard.
No, I'm just pretending.
Last Wednesday, our campaign hosted an event at the Norwood Hotel. It was absolutely packed. What was the subject? Public safety. There was a shop owner said he'd been broken into 3 times. And then one of my former coworkers at Build took the stage. His name is Joey. And he said, not any helicopters, not any firing police boards or police chiefs. The thing that made a difference in his life was a green job. And if I'm mayor of this city, we will be known around the world for connecting the people who most need to work with the work that most needs to be done. Thank you very much.
Earlier today, I announced my commitment to continue to pursue the legal matter of the police headquarters. I've been consistent with that as a councillor. I'll be consistent on that as mayor as well to pursue that matter. 1 year ago today, just about 1 year ago today, I was planting trees for the St. James family, the Boys and Girls Scouts of Crestview in St. James, and the men of the Bruce Oak Recovery Centre who are in treatment. We planted 150 trees along Sturgeon Creek. We came together to do it. Thank you for the work that you do. All of you in the 26 organizations that put this event on tonight. You're needed. You're needed in the city. You're needed for the future of the city. The theme of my campaign is uniting to build a stronger Winnipeg. There is so much that divides us right now. So much that polarizes us. If I'm mayor, I'll bring people together so that together we can build a healthier city, a greener city, a stronger city, a safer city. Thank you.
Andy, by the way, thank you. Please remain seated. Please, everybody, remain seated. But my personal and heartfelt thanks, because you know, when you have 10 or 11, or it can be, and you've made this really, really easy for me. I've learned some things tonight, so thank you. And in the journey in the next few weeks, I'll be talking to each one of you a lot more. I promise you that. Victoria Romero is here. Victoria, you in the house? Victoria?
Hallway.
There she is.
Victoria.
Hallway? Victoria. Victoria. Because she's supposed to say a few words here. So if someone could grab Victoria.
She's coming.
Oh, there you are. Oh, I'm sorry, Victoria.
That's quite all right.
I've interviewed you before, and I apologize.
Oh, well, that's all right. I got a gift for you.
Wow.
Well,
Hey.
on behalf of all the...
Mike.
Thank you so much. Okay, well, on behalf of all the 26 collaborative organizations that came together to plan this event, we just wanted to say a huge thank you to not only all the candidates for sharing your ideas with us, helping us be informed in our democratic process, but also to everyone who came out and attended tonight. It was very lovely to see you here. I want to give a special thank you to Adrian Werner from the Climate and Reality Project. This would not be possible without his efforts, and again, without the efforts of everybody else who assisted. So thank you on behalf of all of us, and then a special thank you to our lovely moderator, Mr. Richard Kluche. A token of our appreciation here, some local products for you to enjoy. So thank you again.
I think it's one of Loney's books.
Thank you again, everybody. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope that this debate truly helps you make your choice in who will be Winnipeg's next mayor. Thank you.